Divante presents eCommerce Talks, where industry experts share their insights about the ever-changing world of e-commerce. Today we'll be talking with Chief of Technology at Vue Storefront and Magento Master, Sander Mangel. Sander, thank you for joining me today. We're very excited, but I know you for a little bit, but I'm sure some people would like to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you start? I mean, you've been around for a while. So can you tell us a little bit more? How do you end up in the e-commerce world?
Right. So about 12 years ago, I got hired as a developer at an agency, and they were doing this thing called Magento, which I pretty much never heard of. And they told me like, you're going to be the lead on this department and get some books and start studying. So I had like 30 days to get into the whole Magento thing. Bought like 3 books, read them in the evenings, and then I started, like, hopefully unprepared, I might say. And I'll admit it, like the first couple of weeks were rough, but slowly it started to grow on me. I did e-commerce before that, mostly bespoke solutions, which means that everything is painful. Taxes, discounts, products, you name it. That's all. You have to build it yourself, right? And then you have this solution out there that pretty much seems to have it all. And if they didn't have it, there would be like a module for it on the ecosystem. So that was interesting, and I started to get more and more into e-commerce since it's a very dynamic way of working. Before that, I did a lot of websites where you have your contact form and maybe some job openings, but it's very static, right? And one of the things I love about e-commerce is the direct return on investment that this client is seeing. You fuck up and they will not have their income for an evening or something like that.
That's very true.
So that progressed, did a couple of years of development, started to get more into lead roles, doing consultancy at agencies, also freelance. Ended up at a merchant for 3.5 years, which was a very interesting experience as you're somewhat protected from the realities of business when you're on the agency side, right? I mean, if something goes wrong or if you have to do a new feature, there is an e-commerce manager on the other side, on the client side, that takes care of a lot of things. And then when you transition to a merchant side, you have to get down into the trenches, do like the negotiations with the finance department, with logistics on how we handle packages, that kind of stuff. So
literally, you've been basically from development all the way up to the salesman of the solution.
And that was interesting. It was a huge learning, and not on the technical side, but on the more soft skill side. How do you get people to buy into this kind of stuff? How do you explain X months of development on a feature that for them is like, I just want a button, that kind of request. So that was very interesting. And after that, I went to product. I got hired at Vue Storefront to help them push their product on the market, which is a headless front end for e-commerce.
Now, I introduced you to everybody watching this as a Magento Master. And even when I got introduced to you, my first question was like, what is a Magento Master? Is it like this guy like a Jedi of the Magento world? Or like, how do you become a Magento Master, or what actually means?
Yeah, it's a term that when you're not around the Magento space can come off as slightly odd. So Magento, in the form of Sherry Rhodey, she's the community manager at Magento, started this program about 3 or 4 years ago to recognize some of the more active community members, which entails either doing blogs or conferences or even just mentoring other developers. Now, I've been organizing together with someone else from the Netherlands, Me Magento, for a couple of years. Also an unconference, which is more a technical conference. I've done some online conference. It's kind of like an escalated hobby, you could say. So because of that, I got elected the Magento Master, one of the 22, 23
around
every
the world.
year. Yeah. So that's very, very cool.
That sounds very cool.
It's a bit of an honor. I'll say that.
I want to try to get in a little more, and I'm going to ask you that you get to see. Especially in this last conference, like what's happening with all this like ideas of microservices and and headless pieces of software that still, to me, I'm still trying to put my head around headless.
Right.
But how is it changing the environment? I mean, people used to have just one solution, basically host at their store or in the computer, where it's everything in one place. But now there's tons, if not thousands, of different solutions that you can just literally connect to, and I guess it saves you time. I don't know. How do you see this happening in the...
That's a good question. So I think headless has been around for ages. Basically, it means that you have an application, either online or offline, that does not have a graphical interface. In this case, that would be your average shop front end that we all know. So headless is becoming more and more popular, I think mainly because as technology is getting more and more complex and the whole ecosystem is maturing, you see that it becomes more and more important to choose the best of breed when it comes to any sort of technology. I think, for example, search is a very, very clear one, right? Where you would have your normal search, which would run on MySQL, a pretty standard database type, which a good example is like the typos that you do, right? I'm looking for shirts, but I type shards or shares or whatever, right? Now on Google, we're used that gets auto-completed into whatever you want to have, and on a lot of e-commerce stores, they don't. They'll just tell you, no, we don't have that, which is we can be. I mean, we're talking about conversion, so it's an important thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's get frustrated if you don't get what you want straight away.
Exactly.
You just don't go back. Don't go back to the store. Yeah.
So we have these solutions out there from some solutions as Algolia or Clevo or whatever is out there that specializes just in search, but they don't sell their software. You rent it. Right, they don't want to give up their IP, so they tell you, okay, install this plugin or piece of JavaScript, and it's talking to our services. So here you see already an introduction into service-oriented architecture, where you are talking to an API, an abstracted interface that code can consume. We do the same for payments. Nobody's really handling credit cards on their own anymore in the bigger store, or maybe the bigger stores, but not the smaller stores. You give them off to a payment service provider, and that makes sure that it gets charged. Right? So why not do the same thing for your catalog or your checkout or even your pricing or stock keeping? You wanna invest in the best of breed technology that's out there. And the decision of making or buying is becoming more and more actually buying. And buying means a SaaS product. Everything is rented nowadays, right? You don't really buy software anymore. And that's a big change for the e-commerce platforms out there, especially the ones like Magento or a bit more down-market WooCommerce. They traditionally have been an monolithic application made out of all these modules that you download from the internet that might or might not be of high quality, that might or might not be actually leaking some private information. I mean, nobody knows. And that's becoming less and less. And I think it's a trend that will continue for at least for the foreseeable future.
And I mean, you've been in both sides. You said you were a developer, and you also been on the front side, literally representing the brand. How do you see the perception from the client side? Are they willing to give away their monolithic idea of having everything, or control of everything, into just hooking up from smaller bits here and there? Is it something that people is more into it, or they're still not very ready to go?
It depends a lot on the merchant. Like the more traditional ones want to own stuff, right? They are the ones that might even buy cars for their company instead of leasing them, that kind of stuff, right? They want to have this piece of software on their server that they can go in and touch to the I mean, they want to be able to move it around and almost feel
it's the ownership feeling,
right?
Yeah.
And then you have I would say a new generation of merchants that doesn't really care about it anymore. They are used to renting stuff, right? They use Airbnb, they use bike sharing, they use whatever you have out there, and they're also used to just renting a search engine. And it's perfect because you don't have to take care of the maintenance, you don't have to take care of upgrades. it just works, and it works really well. You just need to take into account that you're paying X amount of money every month to have that. So it's definitely something that the newer generation seems to be embracing. Also, some bigger companies are more and more investing in that kind of a solution because they see that long-term investments for IT are hard to make, right? We have a general life cycle of about 5 years, I would say. After that, you refresh your whatever backend you have. So why not go with a solution that works on multiple platforms and that can adapt to the multiple business strategies that you might have? Because who knows where you're going to be at in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but you're right. I mean, the new generations are very in touch of what it means to not own a software, just rent software or use a service. Now, I mean, for Magento, obviously, is a change of paradigm. I mean, Magento used to offer everything at once. So like, here you go, right?
Yeah.
So with this whole wave, I mean, how is Magento turning, or how is Magento adapting to this new paradigm?
Right. So Magento saw the same thing happening, right? And they have been going at cloud hosting for a while with mixed success. Some might remember the Go period, where they offered Magento hosted solutions for Magento 1. Now they are back with another Magento cloud offering, but it's always a very monolithic cloud offering. Basically, they're hosting a shop on Amazon, and that's it. More recently, they have become aware of this issue and are gearing their architecture towards more service-oriented offerings. So they promoted a new director of commerce architecture, Igor Mignola, and he will start to transform that whole architecture into actual services. So what we might call a module now will be an independent service that might still act a part in a monolithic setup, but can be replaced by an outsourced search engine or a hosted SaaS solution for your catalog.
Perfectly adapt to Magento. Okay.
And Magento also sees some benefit there when it comes to revenue, right? Because now they're just giving you a big SaaS solution that costs, let's say, $30,000 a year. Well, they might go after even smaller or bigger merchants when they have this, let's say, menu where you can pick from. Okay, I'll just have very basic search. It'll cost me $500 a month.
But then you can customize it, right?
Exactly, but then I want to have stock keeping, which has to be like state of the art, can do everything. Maybe something like in B2B, right? You don't really need powerful search, maybe in some B2B, because you just want this or that tie rip. But stock keeping is so important in B2B. So they might offer you a very expensive and very advanced B2B stock keeping platform.
All right. So it makes a lot of sense. I mean, companies need to evolve into. It's evolve or die. Now, I want to switch a little bit the conversation, not too far though. But I wanted to ask you about Shopware 6.
Right.
Because it is the open source is there, but what are the benefits to work with something like that?
So Shopware has been around for ages, I think. It's not as old as Magento, I'd say, but like it's getting there. It has been a closed source system for a long time, and more recently they've been starting to open source. And they got onto this whole service-oriented architecture pretty early, and that's Shopware 6 basically. So it is built as a headless system. They do offer a simple front end that you can slap on it. They also teamed up with Vue Storefront to have a dedicated PWA-enabled headless front end on it. But they very much focus on the back end. That's what they're good at. That's what they understand. They want to do that. So you see already that they have this service isolation where it's easy to replace certain components. They have a very comprehensive API coverage. They have APIs that not just only get and set data, but actually perform actions, right? And that's a big difference where if you think of creating an order, you have to have products, you have to have an address, you have to have a shipping method. But all these things are not simply set, right? Because the shipping method might be dependent on the kind of products that you have. So you don't want just APIs that set data for you. You want to have APIs that encapsulate business logic.
Yeah. And
I think that's
to your product.
Right, and that's what they're doing very well there. So it has been in, I think they call it alpha right now. We should see a release candidate end of the year, and it's something I'm very much looking forward to. I'm already spinning it up at home to play around with it a little bit.
Okay, Sander. Let's say I'm a big player. I have tons of money. I'm ready to go to the e-commerce world.
Already your best friend.
I know. Well, that will be the first thing, right? But I have a very decent budget, and I'm ready to go. But I still have no clue of what to do. So, what will be the first step beyond the money? What will be the first step for me to set up a proper e-commerce platform?
Right. So, one of the first questions I would ask is, are you going to go national or international? That's a big one, right? Because you have to deal with language, especially in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's language, it's currency, it's even between Germany and Austria, which are two German-speaking countries, there's a lot of difference. Maybe Switzerland is even a better example, where you have still differences in the language.
French, Italian, and German, and all in one.
Totally different, way of shipping goods. So you want to choose a platform that can support that. Now, for example, Magento would be a good solution for that. Also, Hybris or Divante, where you have a couple of solutions out there that might fit that. Another question that will be very important to ask is, what kind of integrations are you doing? Now, you're a bigger player. You'll already have Salesforce in place. You might already have PIMcore in place, or Acneo for your product management. You have a warehouse, or maybe even more than one, through Europe. So there's a lot of implementation coming from that. Now, running Salesforce, you might want to go for Hybris by default, because they tell you that it comes with it. But it's still good to do your due diligence and really look at the various options out there, and especially the cost of ownership. So whatever budget you have, take 1/3 of it, put it in the bank, and keep it for the first year. Especially when you're going to head out to new markets, you're going to need that money to do your marketing, keep the shop running, right? You're not going to turn a profit on this new market right away. So you want to have a buffer, and you don't want to blow all your budget and have management coming after you because you still have to improve stuff after launch. You're going to deal with things that you didn't foresee yet. Translations is an important part there. So whenever you have to republish some products or whatever, you need to get translations, you need to get artwork, that kind of stuff. That's very expensive. So there you have your budget, right? It's about 2/3 of what you should have available to you, and then we can start to decide on the platform that is best.
Now, usually, and I've seen it a lot here, especially here in Europe. A lot of successful companies, they start with no team, no technical team. It keep growing, and the technical team comes later. So,
right.
I'm a CEO of a successful company with all this money. I could go two ways. I can try to hire a whole team for my company to manage all this, or I can literally just give this to someone else to do it for me. How do you see that as a well-spent money, or what are the pros and cons of choosing one or the other?
That's an interesting question. And this is my opinion, right? But I think that if you're a C-level executive with very little affinity for technology, you are going to have a lot of trust in your CTO to do the right thing. And otherwise, there's going to be a lot of frustration, because you might not be aware of what the IT team is actually doing. Because IT is a lot of times, we're working on this upgrade, or, and it takes ages, and you can't really see any end result from it because the front end is still the same. What am I paying for, right?
Yeah.
Well, at agencies, you kind of pay what you get for, or you get what you pay for, the way you want to see it. But they keep you more in the loop of, okay, we're working on this and we're doing a workshop. And I'm not saying it's cheaper. It might even be more expensive because they're used to entertain the client. At least, keep him engaged.
Throw a couple of buzzwords and he'll be like,
exactly.
Okay, they're working.
A lot of PowerPoint slides there. but it's a company that you feel more in control because you're paying the money and they are supposed to do what you want them to do. So I think it's for C-level, it's something that they have to be comfortable with one way or the other. I've been in situations where I was part of an IT team where C-level might not have been fully aware of what we were doing, and thus questioned the value of what was going on there. And whenever you need more resource, they would be like, okay, but are you going to deliver more? Not per se, we just need to invest in this, right? So it's there are different situations, and I don't think there's one definitive answer to that.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, let's say we have companies that they're completely settled, right? I don't know, imagine Zappos or Zalando, companies like that. The environment is moving very fast, and a lot of companies tend to chill and not do anything. So for companies that they're established already, what should be they looking at, or what will be the steps that they're going to evolve into something that they better be prepared?
In a lot of companies, we see that the IT team is very reactive. Logistics want a new warehouse. Okay, we'll implement a new WMS. We'll hook it up to the system, and then we move on to the next project because it's already waiting. While in Zalando and in some other companies, you get this almost incubator where an engineer might try a different technology on the weekend. He becomes passionate about it. He starts to advocate it on the work floor, and all of a sudden you see a small team popping up. I think Zalando calls them guilds, and basically if they have 2 or 3 people that are interested in technology, they allow them to investigate this and to start investing time in this. And I think that is what defines these companies as it drives them forward.
So companies definitely need to invest in innovation. Otherwise,
right. So one of the benefits of hiring a solution provider like a bigger agency is they should be able to do this on their own, right? They have developers that do their hobby projects and then get the room on the Friday afternoon. I think that's a famous one.
The
right?
hackathons and stuff.
The hackathons where they can just try out any new technology, and that's where a lot of interesting projects come from. So Vue Storefront, what I work for, was actually a project for one client, and one of the lead developers on that invested heavily on the technology, on PWA, what it stands for, the benefits we have from it, and he basically created this whole product around it, and now it's something that we sell separately, right? Which is a pretty amazing journey, if you ask me. But that's one of those clear instances where investing in technology can lead to a beautiful solution that now enables merchants with less budget to still have a PWA enabled web shop.
That's it's evolve or die. That's what I always think is companies. I mean, I met tons of data scientists from Zalando, which when the first time I heard, like, you guys sell shoes. Where is data science? But obviously, it makes a lot of sense when you think about like all the innovation behind the company and why they are where they are.
Yeah.
Well,
I think in general, a good way to know what kind of technology you should be investing in is to look at other platforms that your target audience is investing in time in, let's say it, and then look at the issues that you might have. So, for example, why PWA is for me one of the hot up-and-coming technologies for e-commerce is people are starting to get used to the more offline experience. It should be snappy, right? Spotify has it, Instagram has it. So when they go to on your e-commerce shop, it feels clunky.
Yeah,
and
they expect the same speed,
and it
right?
should be snappy. We see a lot of B2B customers that tell us, okay, we're out in rural areas, we're out at trade shows, and the Wi-Fi is crap. I mean, you've been to conferences, they have, for some reason, they always have like one dial-up connection for 500 attendees, right?
566 is always
exactly. So and the guys out there selling products, pushing their services, they have this iPad with them, and then they're like, we have this new project. And it's loading.
You have to wait a little bit. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You're gonna
You're gonna love
loads, you're gonna love it, right? And now with PWA, we're able to cache that offline just before they go into the conference. They have all the images, they have all the prices there, and they're gonna be like, yeah, this is fast, right? You love this new tractor or whatever. I don't know.
But I guess that's one of the things that this whole microservices environment is creating is innovation. Is let's have something people want, but at the same time it pushes people to want things faster.
Exactly, that's spot on. I think the whole service-oriented architecture enables you to adapt technologies faster. So there is a bigger investment upfront where you have to what they call, there's more orchestration, right? How do you take control of deploying a certain application, or how do you do the logging in the monolithic environment? It's a bit easier to do it, or it feels easier maybe. And when you go into services and they come with Docker and Kubernetes as hosting solutions, there is a bit more tech involved in general. But once you have that right, it's so easy to start swapping out parts. I've worked for a merchant, and it was time to switch to a different fulfillment solution because there were more warehouses and that kind of stuff. And what we did was simply build a new application with the same APIs, backwards compatible, then add some new features for the new warehouse that the other systems didn't need to know of, and just swapped it out in one go, and nobody noticed it even. And that for me felt so powerful, because normally you would go into the system, start to swap out modules, right? You had feature flags, like if it's this country, use this. It's time and money. So painful, right? Yeah, and what you see with a lot of companies expanding into more international territory, let's say you're a web shop from Germany, right? You might be looking at the Netherlands, which is a fairly big market, so it's safe to put down a new instance of, I don't know, Magento or Hybris. But maybe going to, let's say, Greece, which you have a couple of customers from, you don't know why, but let's give it a try. You might actually want to plop down some Shopify there just to try it out. You don't want to invest too much money, right? You just want to have a fairly simple solution for that. Now you're going to plop down this very simple solution and then have your service-oriented backend that handles like fulfillment or payments that you can hook up to it. And I think that is very interesting, that you're exposing your business logic to the outside with some logging in, I would suggest, but you're making it much more democratic. You're enabling other smaller platforms to use it while not having to invest big time in setting up this whole infrastructure.
Because even beyond small companies, beyond settled companies, everybody's thinking of global expansion. Not everything is everywhere, right? And it's part of your plan. You want to be everywhere.
Exactly.
But definitely is a good step to take. Instead of investing all of your budget in, all right, we're all over the world, but we're selling still in the same places, is to test, like the smaller services that allows you to test different. Right.
And even when it comes to a re-platforming later on, right, you're now in, let's say, 10 countries, and you started 15 years ago in Germany on some IBM WebSphere instance that is huge, right? And then in other countries, you weren't able to put that down because it's simply too expensive. So you have Magento, and in other countries you have, WooCommerce or Shopify because you're just exploring that. Now, when you want to start either moving it all to one platform, or you want to start re-platforming some of the stuff there, it's comfortable to have the option to do it one country after another. Because if you have to do a big bang, let alone the technical implications of that, which is daunting, you also have the soft side, right? The people have to be trained with a new system, which is a challenge. I've been through that, and I've done the trainings, and these are people that are not used to working with different systems, so it's scary for them. You have to make sure that your whole logistics is catered to or is integrated into this new solution. So having the comfort of taking this step by step, that's something very, very valuable, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure, not only for CTOs, but also, what they report to the CEOs is like, we're not gonna blow our budget. Take it easy.
Exactly.
We're doing everything step by step, so it
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and even being able to go to your colleagues and say, okay, so you're doing logistics. Don't worry, you can still use, I don't know, whatever obscure fulfillment company you're using in that country, because we're just going to switch over this country now, and then go on to the next one.
Sander, well, first of all, thank you for being in the show today. Where can people find you next? I mean, I know you're basically in every Magento event, so. Where can they find out where you're going to be?
Right, so I'm not going to list all of the conferences I am at. I would suggest people to go to Twitter, follow me there, /Sander Mangel. I post there a lot of the events I'm going to, some articles I'm working on, and in general what keeps me busy. So that's a good place to connect with me.
Cool. We're probably going to put Twitter here, or if the editor hates me, he's going to put it here. I don't know. Well, thank you one more time again, and thank you everybody for watching. Next time, please don't miss the show, because we're going on the road. We'll be in Berlin very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sander, again.
Thank you for having me.
See you next time.